Hey Globe Gang, it's Maisha back in the Globe's Beauty Closet for another Big Beauty Tuesday where we gloss, we floss, and we boss. And we have two amazing bosses with us today. We have CaSandra Diggs, who is the new president of the Council of Fashion Designers of America. That's the CFDA, if you did not already know. And she's the first Black woman to hold that role, which is incredible. But she's been doing work there for the past 20 years, as has Tracy Reese, who some of you might already be familiar with because she's a veteran designer who's helmed her own line for decades, doing gorgeously feminine, just incredible dresses. And the two of them work very closely at the CFDA, which is kind of amazing when you consider the fact that for all these years, Black people and Black women have really informed fashion, informed culture. As CaSandra tells us in this conversation, we are the drivers of culture, and the two of them are working really hard to have that not only recognized, but to really address what the industry owes us in return. So, without further ado, here's CaSandra and Tracy. We've just wrapped another New York Fashion Week, now rebranded the American Collections. And we are kicking off Women's History Month now, getting into that. And both of you, to me and my mind, are history-making, pioneering Black women in the fashion industry. People I've looked up to for years, and I think people who are in the fashion industry have looked up to for years. CaSandra, you have been with the CFDA for 20 years now. You're the first Black woman to be the president of the CFDA. And Tracy, you have also been with the CFDA for decades.
I'm actually vice chair of the executive board. When Tom Ford became chairman, he asked me to be his vice chair. And then I'm chairperson of the Black Advisory Board.
Coming off of Fashion Week, obviously, to me, I was very excited. I've been very excited this past two seasons to see how you all would pivot, and you've pivoted beautifully with Runway 360 and, kind of taking this whole thing that we're all used to, like running from show to show for years, running from show to show in New York to a virtual format. And one of the things I was really excited to see was how this kind of democratized things for Black designers in particular. Like I felt like I saw a lot more Black designers on the platform, a lot more spotlight. Would you say that that's accurate and something that was really strategic?
It's something that the CFDA has been working toward for years, actually, even before the pandemic. Our interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion started many years ago. We started in 2018 doing a gender parity study called The Glass Runway with Glamour magazine. We partnered with PVH on two studies. The first one was Insider Outsider in 2019. And just recently in 2020, we've done the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the fashion industry. And so, we've learned a lot from those studies and the need to have more opportunity for Black, brown, and other professionals of color and women and people in underserved and underrepresented communities. And so with that, we've used the opportunity of the pandemic, starting this digital platform, to make sure that we did outreach to those groups and to make sure that they were appropriately represented on the platform.
In any industry that you work, a lot of times people are getting their jobs by people that they know, people who are referring them, kind of like making these connections. And that's not always the case for us. It's like a lot harder for us to find us, and find people to mentor us in those spaces. So, obviously there's been all these incredible kind of coalitions and collectives that have sprung up over the last few years. I'm thinking like the Designers Hub, I'm thinking, Black in Fashion Council, I'm thinking Kelly Initiative, et cetera, it goes on. How are you all working with these incredible kind of like smaller crops of designer organizations? And I know there's a lot of overlap, like a lot of people are in multiple organizations. How is the CFDA hoping to kind of coalesce that all into a stronger pipeline of Black and brown talent?
Each group, each collective, each organization is so valid in its own right. And I think that it's going to be a really interesting year as we all settle into our own initiatives and create our niches, and then learn how to, as a whole, as a total collective, sort of, amplify each other's voices and get this work done.
There's also the issue of infrastructure that, what we saw last year
as people were kind of like posting these black boxes and making big promises, is also all of a sudden there was this scramble for Black talent, Black designers, Black this, Black that. And on one hand, that's thrilling. But, you know, when I was interviewing another CFDA collaborator, Brandis Danielle of Harlem's Fashion Row, one of the things she pointed out is that, you know, for a lot of our designers, if they haven't had the support, the financial support the whole time, that this demand sometimes is
not even ready for the spotlight.
They're not ready to meet that demand. And so there's, as you said, there's so many layers here that need to be addressed. And it's not just about representation and the proverbial seat at the table. There's also, can you help build the table? You know? Exactly.
And that's what's beautiful about Impact and how it's been structured. And the team at CFDA that is working on Impact, they've been so careful to really look at all of the issues. You know, how can more of us be ready when we haven't had the mentorship, we haven't had the financial ability to, you know, play on a level playing field.
Tell us a little bit about the Impact Initiative and about this new job platform that you all launched, with Creatively, which is, again, hoping to help solve some of these pipeline problems that we're seeing.
It's about creating awareness and access, widening the pipeline for the brands, providing voice and visibility to the talent. And then once we have that, then it's about mentoring and professionally developing and career cultivating. So through workshops and classes and one-on-one interactions, to make sure that they have the skills and that they need to progress and succeed when they get to these organizations. And then also on top of that, like you can't talk about the C-suite and talk about the boardroom until they actually get into the pipeline and get into these companies.
You know, one of the heartbreaks of this fashion week for me was not seeing Carly Cushney on the runway, right? And you did talk about the gender issues. You know, you all have also studied these as well. And as Black women in the industry, as a Black woman in the industry, this is something that's always, you know, that intersectional piece is always really important to me, because for the dearth of Black and brown talent that we're still seeing, you know, that we're seeing throughout all levels of the fashion industry, it's even lower for women. So how are you all, aside from just your incredible presence, how are you all hoping to address the intersectionality issues that we're also seeing kind of happen on and off the runway?
There are so many amazing Black female designers out there, you know, that have been working. I mean, you know, people used to say to me, "Oh, you're the only one." I'm like, no, I'm not. There are a ton of us, you know, and there might not be front and center, might not be names you know. Doesn't mean that they don't exist and they're not doing good work, that they haven't found audiences. Look at Fee Noel. Look at the audience that she has built in a really holistic, grassroots way. You know, she's got a connection with her customer like no one else I know, because it's a one-on-one relationship, you know, and that's the future of business, really. I mean, I think that we're so distanced from actual consumers in our industry sometimes, you know, and we look at what this past year has taught us, and it's like having those true relationships is really important. And it's interesting how we're getting back to realness.
It's an exciting time. It's an overdue time, but it's a very exciting time. And I have utter and complete faith that things are moving forward because you guys are there, and because, to your point, CaSandra, like this multi-pronged approach of all these different organizations working in tandem is huge. You know, we need to be able to apply that pressure from different angles. And I think for so long, Black people were always kind of told there can only be one, or, you know,
there can only be one.
But this way, I'm like, no, we could put a lot of like very, you know, stylishly heeled feet on people's necks. That's fine.
This is an exciting time. I don't ever think we're going to go back to what existed before. It's definitely going to be an improved industry, and we're going to keep at it until that's what happens.